So today we're going to be talking about time management and a little model that I put together called the Trichotomy of Goal Orientation. Now before I begin, I want to give a little bit of a caveat. Any good proposition or theory should have counter-arguments and nuance involved, so I'll proceed to give the entire model I have here first, and then at the end I'll describe any nuance and any pragmatic applications that this can have in real life. Time is the coin of your life. It is the only coin you have, and only you can determine how it will be spent. Be careful lest you let other people spend it for you. Carl Sandburg said this. So basically, time management can be summed up into three distinct categories. Time spent fulfilling someone else's goals, which is what we do when we're working a job that we don't really enjoy. Time spent pursuing the end result of someone else's goals already having been met. This is what we do when we're watching Netflix or listening to music or playing video games, things like that. And time spent pursuing our own goals. So to put this another way, this trichotomy can be seen as voluntarily engaging in someone else's ongoing project, whether we like it or not, consciously engaging in someone else's completed project, which we usually do enjoy, and engaging in working on our own project. Some parts of this we'll enjoy, and other parts won't be as exciting. There's no goal that you can have that won't require some amount of unpleasant work. This here is Watto. Watto represents a terrible Jewish stereotype in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. This Toydenarian seems only to be concerned with his business and his money. He even owns slaves, and the Force itself cannot sway his greed. He has a famous line that goes like, "Mind tricks do not work on me, only money." It's just terrible. One of his slaves, Anakin Skywalker, had worked for him pretty much throughout his entire childhood, and was only really concerned about getting by and helping his mother survive. His place on Maslow's hierarchy of needs was so low that he had no inkling of anything like a better life at all. We'll examine this hierarchy in a bit here. Anakin's efforts to help his family survive result in him eventually running extremely risky pod races, and when a Jedi comes to visit and reveals to him his true potential in life, his priorities suddenly shift. Anakin experiences a perspective change. Up until now, Anakin's goals had been entirely in line with that of his boss, because he simply didn't know any better and had no other options available. Okay, let's take a moment here and examine this pyramid before we proceed. The idea I want to get across is that one stands no chance of achieving their goals through self-actualization if they don't have a relatively stable foundation of these tiers. So Abraham Maslow put together this pyramid back in the day to basically represent the structures that we have in modern day life available to us to be able to reach what he calls self-actualization. That's the top of the pyramid where we can actually reach a sense of potential, fulfillment, analyze and develop a sense of purpose, and execute on our creativity to the fullest, and have a sense of agency. So as you can see at the bottom of the tier, we have our physiological needs. We're not going to get anywhere if we don't have a reliable place to put our head to sleep, a reliable source of food and water and clothing, and just the amenities that make us actually feel human. Next one is safety and security, which is essentially having a job, having a good social standing, or being relatively healthy, access to resources and property. As you can see, the next tier is a sense of belonging with community and or relationships or love. Those can be attained through friendships, family, relationships, and intimacy. Once we've achieved those, once we have a relatively good structural balance of those tiers, we can reach a relative sense of self-esteem. We have a relative grasp on the world and our reality and our place in it, and we can reach a sense of confidence and start accomplishing things. We can start to gain respect with our peers and not just be part of a group or be part of a social system. And then after that, we can reach what he calls self-actualization. Here's a basic model that describes how Maslow's hierarchy applies in today's cultural context. During times of depression, it's very hard to reach a sense of self-esteem or self-actualization at all, basically impossible. During times of prosperity and in progressive developed nations, what it's calling during boom times, the citizens have more of a chance of reaching a state of self-esteem and eventually self-actualization. The national governance, culture, and social structure have provided them with the bottom tier necessities, and offers an educational structure that encourages growth. This is a little bit of a bold statement, but I think it holds relatively true. If you're in the United States today, you're likely in a situation where you could be pursuing your goals to the fullest. Unless you have some form of disability or health condition, the US government, to an extent, really doesn't seem to care about sick people, mentally or physically. Last time I checked, our healthcare system ranks 28th worldwide, and we have some of the best doctors and medical equipment in the world. Interesting how that works, isn't it? That said, most developed nations offer jobs that people can use to save up money to end up pursuing their own personal goals. Anakin and his mother spent most of their lives just scraping by at the bottom of this pyramid, never having any hope of pursuing any personal goals at all. This is how it can be in the more capitalist countries. We are encouraged to pursue our own goals, But the framework for doing so that society provides seems to be one of attaining status and wealth via making money by whatever means necessary. We are almost encouraged to step on others to get ahead. The means that we offer to attain such status are often provided by big businesses, which end up coercing workers into an environment that makes them feel welcome, secure, and goal-oriented. But this goal orientation is ultimately based around the company's goals, offering many incentives to work up the corporate chain to eventually attain a higher position in a company that they never really had any interest in to begin with. Unfortunately, people end up settling for these jobs, and they assume that that's the best they'll ever get. I actually recall one day at work, a customer came up to me and they literally said, "Hey, how's it going? Living the dream or living somebody else's?" I was like, yo. Let's take a look at a direct example of what I'm talking about. What you see here is the benefits package of a major corporation. I won't say who it is, but it is a major corporation. Their benefits plan is actually amazing, even for their part-time workers. They offer insurance and everything you see here. This company offers their own system of psychologists and people that you can contact to help you with concerns such as cancer, divorce issues, help with your help with your pets, end of life crises and death, student discounts and things to help you with your education. They offer ways to help you give back to the community by matching your donations to various charities. If you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or anxious, they offer various meditation programs on their website and people that you can talk to help you with your stress. Of course, some of the stress may actually be coming from the very job that you're working at. And various other incentives and things that can make you feel more comfortable about working for the company and make you feel like family. As you can see in the above image, they've pretty much got all the bases covered. These companies actually do psychology research into ways to make the worker feel as though their life is more structured and balanced, often fulfilling the bottom 4 tiers of Maslow's hierarchy, but not that critical 5th one, self-actualization. Of course, I don't mean to imply that these companies are tricking their employees into some false sense of security. Most of this comes from good motives. This is why we have human rights laws and a human resources department. Now let's examine what I call pursuing the end result of someone else's goals having been met. Now, in keeping with the theme of a goal-oriented lifestyle, when we're relaxing with a pleasant Netflix episode or playing a video game or anything like that, what we're engaging in is a project that someone sat down and worked on, a goal of theirs that they have seen fulfilled. They likely did this by organizing a team and setting forth a detailed plan and a timeline of how to accomplish that goal. This was a goal that someone deliberately set their mind to, and you are the beneficiary of their efforts. And you are literally fulfilling their goal, which is to get people to engage in the fruits of their labor. Now, we all have our own creative interests. Everyone has a form of creativity. Even physics, psychology, and neuroscience all require deep creative ways of thinking about the problem and looking at things objectively from different perspectives. It's impossible to deny your own interest forever. Even the video game designer will eventually feel the need to put down the game that he's playing and go work on his own. We can't really help but feel inspired by someone else's project, so go with that feeling of inspiration and engage in your own form of creative expression. Now, I should note, this is a mindset. This mindset doesn't have to take us out of the moment. It in fact can help us appreciate the moment that much more. We can bring ourselves into a state of being more appreciative of the efforts that went into such an amazing and immersive experience. And this, of course, can be a source of humility and gratitude. Now, I should say that we can garner such sensations of humility and gratitude by simply observing nature, appreciating the molecular structure of trees, rocks, and water, and fluid dynamics, and the fact that we and all that surrounds us, all these atoms and molecules were forged in the heart of a star that exploded some billions of years ago, that eventually became what we see around us today. I'll touch on this notion more in another episode. A major benefit that this model proposes is that we don't really need to schedule out blocks of time to keep a goal-oriented mindset. Rather, if we remain mindful as I've described, we can begin to sense when we are getting a feeling of something like, okay, that's enough relaxing, it's time for me to get back to the project I was working on. Or more specifically, okay, that's enough relaxing, I appreciate the efforts being put forth in this Netflix project to entertain me, but now I feel like it's time to work on my own project. Again, this is completely my own theory, and this is just what's worked for me over the years. I don't use a schedule, I do things mostly based on feeling. Feeling and a strong, clear personal narrative. I guess you could just call this being mindful and keeping priorities in line. I do try to start each day reading one of the more complicated topics that I'm trying to study at the moment. Books that are concerning neuroscience or psychology, neurophenomenology, and things like that. By the time I'm done reading those, I've usually got an idea or a feeling of what I want to do first. There's a lot of strong evidence for getting sunlight in the morning before 10 a.m. Just standing outside for about 10 minutes, staring at the horizon and allowing sunlight to hit your eyes. That has a lot of effects on the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which sends a lot of signals to the rest of the body and telling it basically to wake up, start producing adrenaline and cortisol at proper levels. Okay, let's look at the third and final category, time spent pursuing your own goals. What are your goals? Furthermore, let's ask a giant question. Who are you? Who are you? I want you to pause for a moment and think about this. You can pause the video if you like. What is it that makes you, you? If you were asked to describe yourself without using culturally established labels or titles, what would you say? What truly represents you, absent of credentials? What are your real interests? Another giant question that people don't like to think about. What will you be proud of at the end of your life? What will you be reflecting upon having accomplished at that time? These are much different questions than what they ask you in elementary school, like the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? This is more like asking, what does it mean to you to live a fulfilled life? What does it mean to live a life well lived? Another major factor that's helped me keep my priorities in line is kind of a pet theory I have going on that lines up with a lot of common philosophies called universal embodiment. This essentially describes the sensation of being the universe experiencing itself. I'm sure you've heard this term floating around. You are the universe experiencing itself. And you're doing that through a human form. This universe has been blind to itself until it manifested you. It's never been able to study itself. It's never been able to hear or smell or taste or touch itself until it made you. This essentially describes enacting and embracing the concept of truly being the universe experiencing itself through a highly evolved human organism, but for a brief, rare moment in the vast expanse of time and space. Every day I ask myself this. If I were the universe waking up to itself, becoming aware that it is experiencing itself through this human form, what would I do with this grand opportunity? What would I do with this body and this mind? The natural abilities and the genetic proclivities that I have to work with. Because we are made of the same molecules and the same atoms, and share such a deep relation with other people and other species, what does this mean about my place in this world? We'll examine this conceptualized reality a bit more in a future episode. Okay, that's basically it. Let's look at some counter-arguments. When we're doing something like relaxing at the beach, this can be interpreted as our own goal. This is pursuing our goals because this is aiming towards stabilizing our biology. As we talked about before, this is reaching homeostasis. This is getting us to a place where we feel comfortable enough to pursue our own goals. There's another term that floats around called neurostasis, and that's basically the same thing as homeostasis, but for the mind. We want our minds to be healthy, well-nourished and nurtured by our ecological system as well as our diet, our sleep, and exercise. Now, we can take a vacation to the beach, but if we end up staying a whole month at the beach, that's going to have a major impact on us. If we move to the countryside and abandon our previous passions altogether, we have engaged in a negative transformative experience, causing a shift in the neuroplasticity involved in our default mode network, shifting us to a different baseline. Now, there's a lot of estimations on this. I very recently learned that this does not take 3 weeks. It in fact can take, we'll call it a major transformative experience, as L.A. Paul would put it. This can occur within 18 days all the way up to 188 days. I actually completely forget who did the study, but I just learned about this on the Huberman Lab podcast, which is a fantastic podcast by neuroscientist Andrew Huberman from Stanford. Now, I want to examine this term escapism a little bit. This is very nuanced. I mean, we do escape reality a bit when we read books, when we read fantasy novels versus nonfiction, when we watch any movie or anything that takes us away from reality and puts us into another one. This shouldn't be unhealthy. This is what we've been doing forever. Since we've had the ability to speak, we've been telling stories around campfires that take us into another person's perspective for a while. This is completely natural and part of what we have always done. What we have not always done is put on giant VR goggles and stayed in VR land for 14 hours straight. That's what we seem to be doing nowadays. The concept of escapism is being taken more seriously now that VR is beginning to show so much promise. Our sense of self-esteem, love, and belonging in this fourth tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a lot of these sensations can be fulfilled by what we seem to be approaching in artificial intelligence and in VR land. I'm just going to call it VR land from now on. A feeling of love and a feeling of connection seems to be able to be simulated by artificial intelligence, and this is already being advertised as such. There's an app that's being thrown around on social media. This is being advertised as an AI companion, something to help you feel less lonely. And in a country where, only a quarter of the population has someone that they can call a close, reliable friend, this seems to be very welcome technology. The feeling of love seems to be easily substantiated by something that seems like a healthy option at first, but can easily bite us down the road. Just watch the movie Her, for a clear example of this. We're already approaching that time. I've already read in forums people saying that they look forward to their relationship with their AI companion. And it's so rudimentary. If you play around with these things, or if you mess with like GTP3 or GTP4, the new AI technologies, it's it's not that great. Like, it's very obviously not another human on the other line, and yet it seems like we only need a little bit of response to. We need something that simulates listening to us, and having that artificial companion can make a world of impact on some people, apparently. As these entertainment systems and shows become ever more enticing and immersive, and as social media algorithms grow more refined, our ability to pull away from them of our own volition will become more challenging. As companies continue to make their employees feel valued and included, safe and validated, it will be easier for us to subconsciously set aside our own goals and commit fully to those of the company. And as our culture continues to influence and encourage people to pursue status and wealth over integrity and character, and continues to neglect the healthcare and education systems, it'll become harder to say no to committing to a job that offers a 40-hour work week with insurance and all the benefits. Now, another bit of nuance here. The idea that you're working at a job that you don't enjoy completely, like, that's most jobs. Most people work at a job that they have a little bit of interest in. Now, I really want to emphasize this point. Whatever job you have, as much as you may not like it, you're most likely doing something to benefit someone. You're most likely having a positive impact on the world in some way. Unless you're a defense attorney that specializes in murderers, or you're a telemarketer or something like that, then you're probably doing something that has positive impact on people. Now, let's give some common examples. Cashier. Say you're a cashier at a clothing store. People need clothes. People need people to check them out. A lot of people don't do well with self-checkout, especially the elderly. And you're providing that comfort in a human interaction. You're providing the idea that I don't have to talk or interact with a machine to get what I want. I can deal with all of the nuance of the situation of a transaction here if any issues come up, because I'm talking to a human that is good at their job. If you're working at a gas station or a convenience store, people need those conveniences to get to their jobs that they might not like, and their jobs are having positive impact on the rest of the world in one way or another as well. That convenience, especially in the morning when people are miserable and they don't want to get up and they're trying to cram breakfast down their throat right before they get to their jobs. You're providing that breakfast. You're providing the fuel that they need to get to those stores. This COVID-19 pandemic has really shown us the meaning of essential workers and just how much that's being disregarded. If you're a cashier at a grocery store, like, that's absolutely essential. People need food. They need people to help them find that food. So I just want to emphasize that point as a major counter-argument to what I was saying earlier about loving what you do. It's not always necessary to completely love your job or even like it. Keeping this mindset of the value of your job and the impact that you have on the rest of the world, however small, that seems to be invaluable to me. Now, in conclusion, I want to ask some relatively painful but necessary questions. We have to ask ourselves, at the end of my life, what will I have found valuable about what I've done? When I look back on what I've done, what will I be proud of? What are the things that I've valued the most? Is it my relationships? Is it the peak experiences I've had from using my time and my money wisely? Or is it the more mundane experiences? Like, I don't think we want to end up at the end of our lives asking ourselves, did I binge watch my whole life away? According to studies and common sense, the things that people tend to report on their deathbed of valuing the most is those peak experiences. It is those real immersive and engaging moments that they've had with their peers, celebrating life and the positive changes and impacts that they've had on the world, and any major personally transformative experiences. Those goals that we pursue that have a major impact on society are the ones that provide the long-lasting sensations of motivation from dopamine upregulation and the feelings of satisfaction provided by serotonin, whereas engagement in the aforementioned temporary pleasures really only satisfy us for the moment. Fulfilling the more widely impacting goals also provides us with a sense of legacy. The actions we take and the impressions we make will live on after us. So never be afraid to think big, to reach out and collaborate with like-minded individuals. Use the tools available to you, and never accept less than what you deserve. Your time on this earth is yours to decide how to use, so use it wisely. Well, that's the trichotomy of goal orientation. I appreciate you watching this video. If you find this kind of thing valuable, feel free to comment and subscribe, and please share this video to help this channel grow. It's definitely still in its infancy, and I have big plans with it. I plan on doing a lot more therapy and psychology-based content like this, alongside tutorials on self-induced psychedelic therapy. Now those I'll try to keep separate, but this is still just one channel. If you feel this kind of content to be worthy of monetization, please feel free to hit me up on Patreon, or buy me a Danish on PayPal, or any of the other stereotypical cool catchphrases about making money on the internet.